Well, all right. It's Thursday, 10th of February, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning. And please let me welcome all the participants of the learning event on how to accelerate energy efficiency investment, and with particular focus on development of ESCO markets and energy performance contracting. It's been developing extremely slowly in some parts of Europe, namely Latvia as well. That's part of the reason why we are here hosting this event from Riga. But we also have guests from other EU countries who are interested in the same topic. So obviously there is still space for more rapid development of these issues, both of energy efficiency in general and also energy performance contracting as a method of attracting investment for energy efficiency, and making energy efficiency process, energy efficiency financing more fluid, not so much tied to cyclic factors like availability of the EU funding or other sort of grant programs. So we have to break the cycle, which then also facilitates to heightened expectations, people waiting until the grants are available. When the grants are available, then there is limited financing. The construction sector reacts rapidly with increasing prices. So unfortunately, these cycles have negative effects. So we have to break these cycles, and EPC definitely is one of the ways how to break these cycles, or at least facilitate breaking this vicious cycle. So shortly about today. So today we'll be working until 12 o'clock CET, or 1 o'clock Latvian time. I'll briefly bring you through the program of today and also explain the technicalities of this online meeting. So my name is Reinis Āboltiņš. I'll be your moderator today, and we will begin with a very short introduction by myself, which partially I've done already. Then we will continue with the presentation by Mārtiņš Zemītis from the European Commission representation in Latvia. He'll explain us the perspective of the European Commission and about innovative financing schemes at regional and national level, and how they can facilitate financing of energy efficiency initiatives. After Mārtiņš will go to a sequence of 3 presentations, which will speak more about local conditions from Latvia. Mr. Raimonds Švanks from the Latvian Environmental Investment Fund will speak about the situation in Latvia. Rolandas Marcinkevičius from VIPA from Lithuania will explain things in Lithuania, what has been their experience in facilitating financing of energy efficiency. Thank you, Rolandas. And Wojciech Stanczyk from the Polish National Energy Conservation Agency will speak about renovation with EPC plus savings guarantee. So yet another example of how things can be organized to attract financial assistance to energy efficiency initiatives. Last but not least, after that, we have an important speaker from the European Investment Bank. The banks are always important because they have the money and they have the ability to define priorities and finance initiatives that deserve more attention, and definitely energy efficiency is one of those areas where more financing is necessary. So EIB and Robert Perneta, they will also speak about clarification, guidance and recommendations on the EPC involvement in in achieving energy efficiency in public sector. So after these presentations, we will be going into a session of questions and answers, or basically a live session. I hope to have a good discussion there. And I hope to finalize everything within time so that everybody can continue with their day, with the rest of the day. But before that, I want to still remind a few things. Well, first of all, this event would not have been possible if there would be no EC financing, and of course, if there would be no initiative from the Latvian Environmental Investment Fund with the partners from Denmark and Poland. And regarding technicalities, there is interpretation available. If you move your mouse over the badge titled interpretation on the bottom of the screen in the Zoom, you would see this interpretation button, and you can choose English, Latvian, or Polish. The event will take place in English for those who can speak in English and understand English. No need to choose one, but for those who feel more comfortable listening to what is being talked about in Latvian or Polish, so there is interpretation into Latvian and also into Polish available. So please click those respective channels. If you wish to post a question, then and you are not willing or able to do that in English, may I kindly ask you that you write your question down in the chat area. I would kindly ask the interpreter, which is free at the given moment, to also follow the chat during the questions and answers session, and see if it's possible to translate that question into English, and I will read that question out. So I hope that technicalities are clear now at this moment. I've spoken myself already about the importance of energy efficiency, and I've seen already the list of participants. It's quite impressive, I must admit. It's even longer than we've had previously, which is, I think, a positive surprise, not least because we've been speaking about the importance of EPC, energy performance contracting, for quite many years now, and it seems that we are a little bit stuck, but hopefully events like this can contribute to moving ahead with these initiatives and harvesting the best that we can get out of the EU money that is supposed to reach well, end users and make end users more energy efficient through, of course, investing in energy efficiency, both in household sector and also in public sector. So there are definitely barriers around, but let's continue with our agenda today to see how to tackle these barriers, and let's not focus on the past so much as on the future and what can we do to be doing better. So let me see if I have probably, it looks like I have ticked all the boxes in my introductory checkbox. So let's continue with the first presentation today. Martin Zemītis, Deputy Head of the European Commission representation in Latvia. Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rainis. The first question is, do you hear me loud and clear?
Loud and clear, thank you.
Excellent. While I share my presentation, I thank, of course, the organizers of this timely event, and profusely thank for having me as a relatively permanent fixture in these round Baltic events. Let me see if it's getting shared. So yes, thanks again. It's a very impressive set of participants in today's event. So I think there is that testifies to the fact that there's lots of interest in leveraging public funding and getting more private funding into energy efficiency investments in the Baltic states and beyond, which is excellent because the immensity of the challenge that we all have in sort of using the public money, the limited public money that we have in fact increasing energy efficiency to the degree that that is foreseen in the European Green Deal, in the Fit for 55. We will need a lot of private finance, a lot of innovative instruments. And so if we can in some ways address some of these bottlenecks, be them legal, financial, regulatory, or otherwise, I think this event will have served a good purpose. There are basically three things I want to tell you today. I want to address the novelties in regulation coming from the European institutions, from the European Union, and more broadly, I want to speak about financing, about money, and I want to speak about barriers that that may exist in this country that I know best in Latvia in specific. And I think during today in Raimonds and then in further presentations from Lithuania and Poland, we will be able to see, you know, what works and what doesn't work in other countries, perhaps exchange some best practices and see if we can bring this forward. And of course, the big impetus for increasing energy efficiency comes from Europe's ambition to be climate neutral, to become climate neutral by 2050. And of course, there are many pieces to this puzzle, but using energy more efficiency, and we know that buildings use about one fourth, even 1/3 of the energy and account for about the same amount of emissions. So without solving the problem in the building sector, we will not achieve climate neutrality. So therefore, as you know, I'm sure most of you know, the European Union has the European Green Deal, and also has concretized, made more concrete the commitments and legal regulation through the so-called Fit for 55 package, which has come in a number of iterations, both in July of last year and then again in December. In terms of the buildings, we have a new regulation on the table in terms of the recast Energy Efficiency Directive. Then we also have amendments to the Building Energy Performance Directive. And of course, all of this is to deliver the change that we need in a society at firm level, at household level, and deliver it in a fair, cost efficient and competitive way. You know, that is in a market-based way. And that's why, you know, the private finance is so important. I mean, we have figures to show that to reach climate neutrality, we'll need anywhere in the neighborhood of 150 and 250 billion additional private finance going into the green transition. And that's a huge amount. We also have various figures if we want to achieve a climate neutrality in the building sector. For instance, in Latvia, the National Climate Energy Plan and National Renovation Strategy says we need at least 19 billion. That's two annual budgets, right? So of course, the public money is not enough. We need to have a lot of private money, and there's multiple tools that the Commission puts at the disposal of the market to drive this transformational change. The first thing I want to talk to you is about law, and of course we have amendments to the Energy Efficiency Directive. We're upping the ante, increasing the level of ambition that we want to achieve in energy efficiency from the previous 32.5% increase compared to the doing nothing, the no policy change scenario. Now we have increased targets to 36% final energy consumption reduction and 39% of primary energy consumption reduction. So the goals, the ambitions have increased. And why do we need to increase the ambitions? Because otherwise we will not reach, you know, the intermediate goals of 2030 and the final goals of 2050. Okay, so we have binding EU energy efficiency target. We have indicative national contributions. We have strengthened the so-called energy efficiency principle. Is that, you know, of all the investments, when we look at any building renovation, etc., we look at what we can do to increase energy efficiency. Think about that first, and then everything else second. Of course, you know, we need to make the buildings beautiful in line with the new European Bauhaus and other initiatives. but energy efficiency first, not just as a nice to have principle, but as a more solid legal principle. We have strengthened energy savings in the proposal of the directive, in the energy savings directive, in the obligation of end use. We note the exemplary role that the public sector plays. The public sector accounts for a large part of the energy consumption. It's about 12% of the heated total floor space. It's about 5% of the final energy consumption. It's about 30% of energy used in all services. So the public sector has the sort of the first mover obligation, if you will, to show the way. And of course, now in the environment of extremely high, unprecedentedly high energy prices, of course, energy poverty and consumer empowerment are very, very important goals. So now going to the energy services markets. What the directive does in this Article 27 is it actually urges to consider energy performance contracting by public bodies, especially when the renovation of large buildings is considered. In fact, when you have a building which is about above 1,000 square meters in the non-residential public sector, the public bodies, the project promoters will have to assess the feasibility of using energy performance contracting as one of the schemes. I shouldn't say that this is this is sort of a singular panacea which will solve the puzzle, but of course, this is a way to ensure more private funding where public funding will be limited, because what it does, it sort of provides the private finance. It also creates certain performance guarantees, which then the service company does, and then it also allows to share risks between the public and the private sector. That's why energy performance contracting can be a useful medium. And of course, all of this is done to increase the expertise, increase knowledge and professionalism in the energy services markets, so that there is more trust, more predictability, and so we can drive these ambitious projects forward. And as I mentioned, the public sector has an important role to play. There is a new obligation of annual reduction of energy consumption by 17.8% in the next 20 years, which is then subdivided in each of these 10 years. And that translates into 1.7% of energy consumption reduction in public sector. There is some leeway for the member states to select the public bodies to which this relates, but so there is an obligation of annual energy consumption reduction. Also, there is another new provision in this new section in the directive, which calls for annual renovation of at least 3% of useful floor space of all public buildings above 250 square meters. So that's the new Article 6 of the directive, which is also, sort of a goal driver, sort of an aspiration for member states to invest into energy efficiency, to think about useful ways how to do that better. And of course, the contracting authorities are then obligated to assess the feasibility of long-term energy performance contracting when they do the procurement with significant energy content. So that is to say, if they are doing renovations of or investments into district heating systems or public lighting systems, that's where energy performance contracting is quite often used. Also, there are some good examples in Latvia in public lighting systems, but also when you're onboarding renewables in the public sector, solar panels, heat pumps, different alternative technologies. That's where energy performance contracting can be useful. Now that's about the one directive. Now let me talk a little bit about this other directive, the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, which is sort of the novelty which came out in December, and that of course is to drive the renovation wave. You can see in the graph here is you have the historical data, and then you have the baseline scenario, and then you have sort of the mix with and without the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive amendments. And of course, the ambition is to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, to reduce the final energy consumption, and a very important sector is heating and cooling, and to decrease the energy consumption there. So it's very important to have new standards what relates to the energy performance of buildings. And so there are four areas that are part and parcel of this revision. that is renovation, decarbonization, financing, and modernization and system integration. We're moving towards minimum energy performance standards of buildings, especially focusing on the worst performing buildings. There is a proposal for energy performance certificates, which would be uniform to all buildings in all of EU. There is a proposal for individual building passports, and also sort of making more important role for the national building renovation plans. You know, all the EU member states have developed these plans, but now they will be onboarded as a part of the national energy and climate plan process. In terms of financing, what is very important is the development of deep renovation standard. As you know, in EU, we did not have a singular deep renovation standard. There was some estimates of 60%, but now we have a deep renovation standard, which says in the first phase, we're moving towards buildings which are nearly zero energy buildings, and the second phase, we go to zero energy buildings as relates to the new construction. And as relates to the renovation sector, of course, there we have to see what the challenges are in each of the economies. And I speak about the EU as a whole. And of course, you know, in some countries, you know, we have more multi-apartment buildings. In some countries, we have more private homes. Also, the public sectors are a bit different. But these minimum energy performance standards should be helpful in reducing the risks, increasing more transparency, increasing the availability of data on which to base financial decisions. Decarbonization is important because we have now introduced the zero emission building standard. We're looking more at the whole life cycle of buildings and sort of the carbon circulation. And also, there are proposals, these are coming from a different directive, for incentives, removing incentives for the fossil fuels and creating incentives for alternatives and renewable energy solutions in buildings. And then, of course, you know, what is also important is smartification and digitization, smart grids, sensors, focus on well-being, indoor air quality, etc. All of that is part of this revision. So as I said, the focus would be on sort of the worst performing buildings to bring at least to class F by 2027, and all buildings at least by class E by 2030. As relates to public and non-residential buildings, and what relates to residential buildings also to up the ante and increase the energy efficiency class a tad higher. I think what is perhaps also important to note here is that the member states, according to this amendments to the directive, must not subsidize fossil fuel boilers, including gas boilers, as of 2027. Okay, this is still a draft which has to be agreed, but we can clearly see that we're moving away from fossil-based solutions to renewable solutions. Of course, you know, in line with the times, strengthen requirements for charging of e-vehicles. You know, we need to merge buildings and car sector. We need to make sure when we build or renovate substantial renovation that we in fact foresee electrical charging opportunities, both for vehicles and for micro-mobility solutions. And then, of course, we also need to remove obstacles to renovation. So that's how much I wanted to touch upon these two directives, energy efficiency and the building energy performance directive, where we will see increased level of ambition, more and more pressure, if you will, on the governments to think energy efficiency first. Now let's talk a little bit about the funding landscape. And luckily, Reinis already spoke of the challenge to sort of spread the funding evenly and not be excessively dependent on sort of European Union grants, and use perhaps financial instruments more to bridge this situation. But luckily, there is a lot of support in terms of financing and also technical assistance out there. You all would have heard and know about the new kid on the block, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which 37% of which has to be invested into greening projects, energy transition projects. Of course, the cohesion funds, the next generation of the cohesion funds is just around the corner. And then, of course, we have also solutions which will make energy transition more just and more fair, such as the Just Transition Fund, also the proceeds from the sale of the ETS, and of course, as you know, the carbon price is going through the roof for various reasons. the upside of this is that there's lots of revenue from that to invest into energy transition, and modernization fund is one of the facilities through which that can happen. Today, we luckily have experts, colleagues from the European Investment Bank participating. They also have, of course, the ambition and sort of the mandate to be Europe's climate bank, the green bank to finance projects which including using energy performance contracting schemes to drive decarbonization. And in particular, and also in this country, what has been very useful, not just the money, but also the technical expertise, the kind of the soft skills. The Elena facility, I'll show you one slide afterwards, is a good example. But then also, of course, we have many solutions out there, but we need new solutions and new applications, and that's where Horizon Europe and Innovation Fund programs come into play, because we have not sort of discovered all the applications of all the technologies out there to get the more bang for the buck, the more efficiency for the investments. And of course, then other commission directly administered programs such as Life Plus program has a special 1 billion allocation for the next 7 years for clean energy transition. I mentioned Elena. Elena is a good tool. For instance, in this country, in Latvia, Elena allows their grants for doing energy efficiency audits in buildings, which is useful. This tool is not a grant for implementation of investment programs, but it can be very important in preparing the programs and sort of assisting from a technical point of view in their implementation. And so about 250 million has been invested, and the leverage, the effect has been very high. It's been above 30, so it has been able to leverage 7.3 billion of investments. And of course, this is a good way how we can leverage the grant money. I'll probably skip this one. I mentioned that already, but I want to spend 2 minutes to explain that one of the issues is, of course, the risks that are inherent into energy efficiency projects, and de-risking is an important part. Sharing of the risks between public and private sector, but also looking at investment projects which have been already realized, which have been done, and this platform, the DEEP platform, can be very useful because very seldom will there be a project that you can imagine, in the Baltics, in Poland, that has not already been done elsewhere, with the requisite financial and market information. So this website, this portal, open data, 17,000 energy efficiency projects from 30 data providers, provides a good way to de-risk, to look at what is the return on investment, what's the median payback time, for buildings and for industry. So this can be a useful tool. And finally, let me spend now a few minutes to talk a little bit about the energy performance contracting and some barriers, as Reinis mentioned, without a negative spin, with a positive spin, because we want this to be a useful tool. We want to have more ESCO projects to happen in the countries, especially as relates. I mean, we see already that working relatively okay. We have the first pioneer projects in the private sector, but in the public sector, the projects are still very few and far in between. So the first thing to unlock the energy performance contracting is legislation, and there's not so much of the EU legislation which would prohibit this. There would probably be more national legislation, and we need to see how we can create these long-term contracts for the public and private sector, which are aligned with the Eurostat rules, but which allow them to be considered off balance sheet. Because of course, still this year, Latvia is and with the rest of the European countries is benefiting from the so-called general escape clause, whereby the deficit and sort of the debt figures, because we're recovering from the crisis, are not binding yet, but from most likely from next year on, they will be binding. So it's important that we, from one perspective, that we make the investments necessary. From one perspective, that we don't overburden the public finances for the generations to come. So we need to look at the legislation to make sure that that's possible. In order to do that, there's a good way to create perhaps a model contract, because these projects are not so different from one another, and sort of make sure that this model contract works with the national rules, with the Eurostat rules, and that we can ensure off-balance sheet energy performance contracting. So model contract is a good way how to move forward. But of course, we also need to set up a financing mechanism, which would allow the refinancing and forfeiting of the energy performance contracts to reduce the costs for the public sector. So while we have interesting schemes in perhaps the neighboring countries, we will see that in the presentations to come. In Latvia, we don't have yet a set financing mechanism. As I mentioned, we have a few cases. We have some investments into and public EPC in system as relates to public lighting systems. We have now one private sector project where solar panels, a small solar park has been set up using the ESCO scheme, but of course we need to have scale it up. And then, of course, what is the benefit of the cohesion countries, including Latvia, is that there are EU grants, through the Recovery Resilience Facility, through structural funds, cohesion policy funds, the EBRD funds, the European Regional Development Fund, which can be combined then with the financial instruments to allow the deep renovation, the public sector investments while remaining off balance. And then, of course, knowledge and capacity building. I'm not arguing that we should have sort of an EPC unit in every municipality, but I would say is that we can use, Elena, we can use LIFE, we can use other instruments, in fact, to provide technical assistance and prepare the project pipeline. Because oftentimes, we're saying, okay, we have legal impediments, we have legal barriers, but then again, at the same time, we also need to have projects. And if we have perfect legal situation, but we don't have specific projects with prepared, then this perfect legal framework is good for nothing. So there's a little bit of chicken and egg, but of course we all know and understand that we need to build understanding and build knowledge and build capacity, and we have some tools out there for that. With this, I think I stop here. I think I hope I have provided enough fodder for further discussion. Basic takeaways from what I said is, at the EU level, the level of ambition is increasing. Of course, we'll need a lot of financing. Public financing will be enough. We'll need to sort of leverage and crowd in a lot of private finance. They sort of movement towards decarbonization, electrification, away from the fossils towards the renewables is very strong, very much out there. Legal requirements will obligate countries to think about energy efficiency. It is, of course, also good business, and certainly there is scope for energy performance contracting in Latvia as in other member states. So, Reinis, I stop here. I hand it over to you.
Right. Thank you, Martin. I think it was very good updates on where we stand and what's on the horizon. Not least because it's part of the Horizon 2020 program. So it's important to see what's on horizon, and it sets quite clear stage, quite clear rules for future activities, and I think it gives sufficient time for countries also to plan their energy efficiency support systems and see how the local financing can contribute together with the EU financing to make a cumulative effect, which is sufficient to move things ahead in terms of energy efficiency. And looks like we are very much on schedule, and I will kindly ask those who might have questions at this moment in time, leave those for the discussion session, unless some of the speakers might indicate that they have to disappear from our meeting. But if not, then let's leave the questions for the questions and answers and discussion session. All right, so I'll move on and give the floor to Raimons Švanks from the Environmental Investment Fund in Latvia, and he's going to present the basically a picture about how things are in Latvia currently regarding EPC things. So Raimond, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you, Reinis. Let me see, share the screen. Okay, yeah, thank you, Reins, and thank you, Martin. Your last slide on EPC ties also very well into what I'm going to tell. So I'm representing Round Baltic Latvia team, and today I want to share with you important findings during the latest of roundtable events within Round Baltic project. We consider these findings important because they finally clarify why EPC development in Latvia is at the stage it is. Therefore, the subject of my short presentation is the private EPC involvement in financing energy efficiency, the Latvian policymakers' outlook. And since this is a learning event, I, as well as the rest of Round Baltic team, would like to also later hear your take, your opinion on this. Sorry. So Round Baltic in Latvia acts as organizer, coordinator, and facilitator of productive interaction between the energy efficiency practitioners and policymakers. With the goal to minimize the obstacles identified in safe forum roundtables, which took place in 2018 and 2019, and to find alternative financial sources to create new financial instruments. And we're hoping to achieve this through gathering the stakeholders in dynamic forum and stimulating their constant and continuous further cooperation. There were multitude of obstacles identified in safe forum roundtables in 2018 and 2019, and we do understand that we cannot find solutions to removing all of them at once. So we chose only a few, the ones that were most crucial for making a difference, and in our opinion, most realistic to solve. And one of the major obstacles, and at the same time, so to say, the elephant in the room, at least in Latvia, is insufficient funding for energy efficiency and improvements. European Commission clearly stated that EU and other public funds alone will not be sufficient to cover the investments necessary to reach the energy and climate objectives in 2030 and 2050. That there is a need to invest estimated 392 billion more each year in energy system than it was done before in 2011, 2020. And that energy efficiency faces one of the largest investment gaps, estimated at around 165 billion euro annually. It would be also, Martin can later tell us how much of this gap actually corresponds to Latvia's situation. Since EPC in all forums attracts major interest, and because so much effort and time, as Reins also mentioned, has been invested in its development in Latvia on both sides, from practitioners and also policymakers, we decided that Round Baltic efforts must give the policymakers the needed final motivation and push to do what is necessary to get EPC in Latvia going at last. And before I tell you what we found out, which will be shortly, I will quickly set the stage. So, just a second, I apologize, wanted to tell something also about EPC. I know that you know what EPC stands for and what it is, but also the number of participants in this event shows that, and that's great that after all these years, you have still hope that this can be done and this perfect tool can be implemented. And because it has been recognized worldwide as the most one of the most effective methods of achieving sustainable and high quality energy efficiency results. It is a win-win solution where implementer is keenly interested and motivated to achieve the best possible results for the client in terms of performance, quality, longevity, cost. And this is because it's short and as well as long-term, the remuneration directly depends on it. I mean, how can you beat that? Many European and non-European countries use EPC contracts to reach the goal of sustainable development in line of European Commission's directives that require matching the objectives fixed in the European Energy Policy Plan 2030. So what do we have? European Commission has distinctly and continuously communicated that EPC is proven solution to attracting private funds to energy efficiency. The European Commission's message could not be clearer. Like EPC is the way to go. There's also has been a DG Energy campaign to enable core stakeholder better understanding of EPC models, business model and its challenges, opportunities, to increase confidence regarding its reliability and effectiveness. There's also guide to the statistical treatment of energy performance contracts available. It's published in 2018 by Eurostat and European Investment Bank on treatment of energy performance contracting in government accounts. It has provided opportunities for addressing remaining regulatory barriers to these contracts in member states. Also, thousands of hours has been invested within such Horizon 2020 projects as Sunshine, Accelerate Sunshine, to mobilize and inform all interested parties about opportunities comprehensive building renovation with EPC and to ensure energy efficiency guarantee implementation in the infrastructure and building development. There are also standardized EPC contracts developed, measurement and verification forms, and detailed guidelines how to implement EPC. This is basically all we have this support from European Commission. Now, also on national level, we have developed National Energy and Climate Plan. And it clearly states basically all the obstacles that are currently we facing. It states that we need to develop guidelines for preparation of public sector ESCO projects. We need to develop a model of fiscally neutral agreements. And we need to ensure that local governments and public authorities can make long-term commitments more than 5 years as now, so basically up to 20 years or more, if ESCO project is implemented. Let's see where I am. I'm jumping, I apologize, I'm a little bit nervous. So basically, yes, the Latvian National Energy and Climate Plan states the obstacles and provides also what needs to be done. I guess that's because my computer doesn't want to listen to me.
You still have 5 minutes, no worry.
Yeah. Okay, so, and but so we have all the support, and this is where, as the saying goes, the plot thickens. While we have everything previously mentioned, it seems that the policymakers in Latvia have a change of heart. In other words, the attitudes toward the EPC has changed, and what we found out during really surprised us. The policymakers participating in discussions clearly reveal the reasons of their resistance to developing playing field for ESCO services. And I will now tell you the 8 main reasons voiced, and basically I will tell as from the voice of Latvian policymakers. Okay, number 1, EPC is complex, burdensome, requiring extensive EC and Eurostat approval process for every single ESCO contract to be undertaken. So basically, saying the standard contract has been drawn up. It was the task of Ministry of Economics. EC experts were involved. Long consultation with Eurostat took place, and it ended with Eurostat saying, okay, the contract is there, but you will always have to get approval for each and every contract with Eurostat. Number 2, it's only worthwhile with multiple project bundling, minimum 10 million euro. So basically it's saying that it's never been done for single building. It doesn't work that way anywhere, all over the Europe, and under 10 million is just not worth starting. If we try to get approval for each building with Eurostat, we will get answer, get your act together and make normal size bundle and approach them. Providing EC pathway to borrowing for ESCOs is a threat to Latvia's fiscal space. Yes, there is a resistance to ESCOs, and it has been since 2008 financial crisis. Because of limiting public debt and not giving free ticket to uncontrolled lending. So naturally, there is this desire to look after and control. And if European Commission and Eurostat say, please control your fiscal space, then that's what we are doing, and that is our job, and it is our duty. Number 4, opening the gates for ESCOs might cause inflation of construction costs, which needs to be avoided. Ministry of Economics in Latvia is responsible for construction costs. And by the way, Latvia's current policy, public policy, is that investment should slow down. If we would solve the issues for the introduction of EPC and suddenly many billions of euros with investments would land in Latvia, what would happen? Construction inflation would occur and no good would come out of that. Number 5, it's much more important to use the finances offered by EU grant money and consider ESCO services only after this option has been used up. So currently there is a choice, EPC or grants, and EPC is the second best solution to energy efficiency problems. Only when grants limits are reached, the usefulness of EPC appears. Current Latvia's energy efficiency target, which is to improve energy efficiency in 3 buildings per year, is met, and we are doing our job, so there is no reason for stress. So yes, so we are not sitting and doing nothing. We do our daily work, and we are currently meeting our goals. Current Latvian government apparatus does not have a human capacity and skill level to undertake the implementation and control of active ESCO market. So it would require additional administrative work on the part of public administration. And basically, with existing human capacity, government officials would have to do it in their spare time. And number 8, this can be changed only by the highest level political decision on what is important for Latvian economy and fiscal space of Latvia in at least the next 10-year period. So everything just said, I want to say that by no means is to diminish the work done by public officials. And we are very thankful that for a change, there was finally an open and direct language used by policymakers in describing current outlook and voicing their concerns. So the question of the day and our next challenge is where do we go from here? Thank you.
Thank you, Raimons. Well, indeed, where do we go from here? Good. It's not as as dramatic as to be or not to be. I hope the answer is to be. It's just a question of how do we do it best. So, to find out how can we possibly do it best, we can also learn from others, and what's best than to learn from our neighbors who allegedly have been more successful than us ourselves. We're catching up, I hope. So Rolandas Marcinkevičius from Lithuania's VIPA agency will explain us how things, well, ought to be done, probably. Rolandas, the floor is yours. Next 15 minutes are yours.
Hello. I share screen. Is everything okay?
Yes, we can hear you and see you well.
Okay. Thank you, Rainis. Thank you, Raymond. Good morning. Let me introduce myself. I am Rolandas Marcinkevičius, and today I represent Public Investment Development Agency, in short, VIPA. I am an expert in business development department, and I am responsible for development new financial products or ideas. And ESCO model was the first initiative in this company when I started in 2015. Thank you for invitation to participate in this important event. I think the issue of energy efficiency has never been more relevant in the past, especially if we look at the energy prices today. Today I would like to present VIPA's and Lithuanian experience in developing ESCO market and the EPC contract. So let's briefly about VIPA. VIPA is a state-owned national promotion institution which provides the loans, guarantees for repayable investments, and implementation of similar measures for urban development and the optimization of public infrastructure, and of course energy efficient projects. Our activities are financed by European Union, national and other financial assistance programs and financing sources. And our mission is to increase and improve the growth of and optimization of public infrastructure in Lithuania by ensuring rational access to financial instruments. And our mandate to act in areas to develop urbanized territories, modernized, and develop housing and public or public interest related infrastructure, and promote energy efficiency. We strong focus on green investment and of course, building renovation projects make up the largest part of our project portfolio, and here we have the most experience. So let's begin to public buildings and where it all started. In 2015, the Ministry of Energy sets a long-term strategy in Lithuania to modernize the 700,000 square meters area of 4,000 public and government buildings by 2020, which will require about 440 million of investments, or annually 140,000 square meters, and require 88 million of investments. Of course, the obvious financial gap, the central government introduced the ESCO model as a financial instrument to increase private capital. Also, the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Energy and VIPA set up the Energy Efficient Fund with soft loan financial instrument for public building renovation projects, and VIPA appointed as a financial instrument manager. So we had the program and the funding in the place, so where are the challenges? We saw some public institutions cannot borrow by law, and other institutions can but don't want. Loan for public body, no way. And when we start talking about ESCO model, EPC contracts, for us this model was new and scary beast to use. When we go to challenges more detail in the projects, we saw that to achieve real savings, economic viability is quite difficult because high cost of deep renovation. The situation, not currently, but in these days, a few years ago, we had very low heat prices. Why renovate? All these projects says that need additional subsidy for modernize these projects, especially in cultural heritage buildings. Also, one of the difficult topic is fiscal debt. All these contracts is on balance. Another problem, what we found in challenges, is energy data of public buildings. We had 1 meter for 5 buildings, and we don't know how we concept exactly the building. Energy efficient for public bodies is not important because we don't have obligations for energy efficiency. We finance from public budget, and that's it. Don't care how consumed energy. But real situation of public buildings is also not good. For these buildings need not only energy efficient investments, it's need to replan, reconstruct, and because long time these buildings not very good maintained. When maintenance on the political overview to public assets, I think also the main problem that we found. And also, if we look in general in renovation challenges, the financial problems with banks that we not involved in new activities, new projects, we need a track record. I mentioned the low heat prices and the low heat, the low energy prices, and also limitation of construction markets that we typical could design, construct, but operate is difficult to count, and for ESCO contracts, and we had 2 procurements that construction companies don't understand and think that ESCO is a typical construction contract. And what corrective measures have we made yet? But firstly, and I think important is facilitating and promoting financial instruments One of solution that was that Ministry of Finance take resolution to centralize public buildings, public offices, and now we have centralized public buildings manager. Other important point we created technical assistant measures for energy efficiency audits and some design activities. We improving building ownerships related obligation system and very important that ESCO model was discussed and promoted at the state level. WIPA was involved and WIPA started act as a one-stop shop, blending financial instruments and a grant in this project. And we start standardization and simplification of the process. We used ELANA support to set standards, standard documentation for contract and procurement, and then we had a difficult discussion with Eurostat to searching opportunities to construct off-balance contracts. So, what the station, what EPC station in Lithuania? Yes, we have some pilot projects that were not easy to implement. The result are not attractive. We had a recommendation, but I think we should focus on other challenges, and what we thinking that we need to for the future implement the EPC procedures and documentation. That's it was a big gap in these documents that we tested practical. We need to involve construction market that want to became the ESCOs in the earlier stages when we planning and then changing in the framework of public building processes. And also important to know that I think in Latvia the same that market is too small for international ESCOs yet. When we don't have important project portfolio. And of balance finance, it's also quite difficult to construct because it will depend on the energy prices and the real savings. Another challenges in Lithuania that EPC is based is the same model as PPP, and the procedures is the same. It's quite difficult to drive as PPP framework, and we have to decouple this projects procedures from PPP. And after that, another important thing is develop local financial market and financial instruments available for EPC.
5 minutes, Rolandus.
Okay, and what lessons we as WIPA, as financial institution, learned. That very important in-depth market assessment, ex ante. It's important to see a big picture and early consultation with shareholders, stakeholders, and all market. And priority of this ex ante, I think our experience that prepare in-house assessment, because the consultants sometimes don't really know what you want to create. Very important, consistent politician support that you mentioned. That few points. Grants is always attractive, but we don't have grants to meet these goals. And very important, consistent police and stable procedures. Another is facilitating and promoting financial instruments, the delegation of process on technical assistance facilities for project development, promotion, awareness raising of financial instrument, and play carrot and stick game, motivate and then punish everyone's. And simplification and standardization of financial instruments, and very important to make the financial instrument as flexible as possible, because it's very important. The regulation of finance is not flexible as we want and needed for this model. Develop standards and simple documentation, and try work as a one-stop shop concepts. And in our example, not in one institution, but collaboration of some institution, it's possible to boost. Another very important point to other organizations, slowly start of financial instruments, EPC, raising public awareness, changing mentality, subsidy versus loans, challenges to shift thinking from grants to revolving instruments. It's quite difficult. And finally, a brief look for the future perspectives. We try fulfill the long-term renovation strategy recommendations. We planning to develop new financial mechanism, start building renovation district level, and finally, if we return to the topic of our event, how to accelerate energy efficiency investments, in our experience, high quality bankable project pipeline is the first step in attracting private funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Rolandas. This was a great quote, of course, on your last slide. I think it's absolutely sums up the essence of the message, really. So thank you very much indeed. I think there was plenty of food for thought and some ideas to pick up and build on in the future, also locally in Latvia, but probably not exclusively in Latvia. I mean, energy efficiency is a hot indeed, too hot a topic around Europe, not only exclusively in the northeastern part of it, but also in other countries. So plenty of things to do. Thank you, Rolandas. I hope you will stay with us, and I'll swiftly move on to our next speaker, Wojciech Stańczuk. I hope I pronounced it correctly, from the Polish National Energy Conservation Agency. Well, Poland has some experience regarding EPC plus savings guarantee. I hope to learn something new. I'm sure there's going to be something new there. So Wojciech, the floor is yours. Please share your knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation for today's meeting. I hope you can hear me well, and you can see my presentation in the presentation mode. I hope that's a yes. I will start either way. My name is Wojciech Stańczuk. The pronunciation was almost perfect. I will talk about the renovation with the EPC Plus Savings Guarantee, the program that was established in Poland in the scope of the Finergodom project that you may already know of, and you may already have heard of the program since it was also presented on the Round Baltic Forum before. But since it started its operation, I will talk also about the first experiences that we have with the program, and how do we see the ESCO market developing within this program. So starting from the initial idea, what do we wanted to do with the program is create a financial instrument that will support the deep renovation of buildings in Poland through the use of the EPC contract. And for that to work, we wanted to establish a long-term fund that will purchase receivables from ESCOs, that will allow ESCOs to engage in new projects and not have their assets frozen in a deep renovation, which for many cases the contracts take quite a long time, and the assets are frozen for quite a long time, thus making it difficult for the ESCOs to take on new projects, and essentially even the larger ones have a limit to do that. And early on in the process, we noticed that there is a need for additional elements to be implemented in this scope that we foresaw at the very beginning, is a need to be more competitive with the current available models for financing of the renovation processes. So we, on top of that initial idea, we also added a subsidy program offered by the National Fund for Environmental Protection and Water Management in Poland, which is the renovation of the EPC Plus Savings Guarantee. That is the main topic of my presentation. And through that definition within the program, we also kind of binded the whole idea, defining also who the beneficiaries could be. So we offered this program to local authorities, housing cooperatives, and housing associations, and companies owned by local authorities. And we see this funding as a kind of a own contribution of the beneficiaries to the contract, so that it limits the time that it requires to get the savings back, and limits the length of the contracts, and thus making it more beneficial for the ESCOs and for the building owners side as well. And within this scheme, we as a Polish National Energy Conservation Agency took part as an energy advisor in the pilot phase of this program. So we currently are talking with beneficiaries and trying to attract interest in the program. And as well as on the ESCO side, we discuss the program with them and try to hear out their concerns, and try to engage them in the projects that we currently have on the beneficiary side. And of course, many of you mentioned this, and we also took this path as well, is to create a standardized EPC contract that we use within the project. It is actually required to be used within the program, so that it allows also the fund that purchases the receivables. So in this case, it's a Polish fund for Polish Development Fund, PFR, and it also kind of creates benefits for all the three sides, so beneficiaries, ESCOs, and the fund, to make it more standardized and make the transaction costs lower. So what are the details of the program? We offer, the program is kind of split into two phases. Currently, we are in the pilot phase of the program, but we also foresee that just after the pilot phase, there will be a main phase, and the budget for the main phase will be 10 times larger than for the pilot program as of now. And it's about 2.2 million euros for the pilot program phase, and then 10 times more for the main phase that will come after that. The buildings that we focus on currently are multi-family buildings in the pilot phase. However, we already foresee and we already see the interest of the public sector as well. So we will extend the scope of the financing available to also public buildings in the main phase of the program. And as I said, the program is ongoing. So currently we have since December last year, we started the pre-application process, and it is for the pilot phase about to end as of end of March. So there's around 1.5 months still yet to be available for the pilots to apply for the program. And of course, in the meantime, since the process is also can be done in parallel, there's an application phase open also in December, but will close next year in February 2023. And the subsidy we offer is between 10 to 30%, and it's dependent on two aspects. One is the scope of the renovation works, and the other one is the amount of final energy savings achieved. So for every project, at least 30% of final energy consumption has to be reduced to be eligible for any kind of subsidy. And then in case of a deep renovation, over 60% of final energy consumption is decreased. The projects can apply for 30% subsidy. And also these are not the only requirements within the program. Some of those I also mentioned in additional elements. So the minimal value of the investment is quite low, I would say, not very challenging for most buildings, but in case it is challenging for some buildings to not to achieve this minimal value, we also allow for grouping of the investments, so that the in case of that, the buildings could group up to achieve this minimal value. This is kind of straightforward and self-explanatory, that we require also energy management system to be in place after the modernization. Since it's an EPC contract, you have to be able to track the savings. So this is also mandatory. Up to 20% of the investment value can be the non-energy measures can be included. I took note from the last presentation that the recommendation was to decrease that, and we also had discussions about how large the scope should be. So from the beneficiary side, especially in the multifamily buildings, we noticed that they are very interested in also the non-energy measures. It makes the economy of the result less interesting. However, either way, in most cases, they would have to implement those measures, and most projects combine energy and non-energy efficiency measures. That's why we decided to also include them. And there's a limit of 20% of the investment value can be covered here. Of course, this doesn't mean that no further measures could be included. However, they will not be eligible to apply to receive a grant for that amount. So they can include more measures. However, this will not receive grant if it's exceeding the 20%. And the last part is that all buildings need to reach a dedicated standard of efficiency. So as of a pilot phase, is focusing on multifamily buildings. I mentioned specifically for multifamily buildings, the final energy consumption should be not higher than 85 kilowatt hours per square meter per year, which is challenging for many buildings, especially if they're not focusing on deep renovation, but rather on some partial renovation measures. Then this could be well. This essentially also helps us to establish that there is a requirement to reach a certain standard and a certain level of energy consumption, and thus also assuring that these renovations will indeed be deeper renovations that we foresaw at the beginning that we want to support. So I said that there is a two-part application process, and this in fact is also included. How we foresee it to happen is that we start with the pre-application, quite a simple approach, so that the beneficiaries define the projects very broadly for which standard they want to apply for, whether it's at 10%, 30%, and the scope of their investment also correlates with that. So they have to define that, and of course introduce themselves to us. So what buildings do they want to renovate, how much they want to apply for, and also who they are, and if it's a grouped application or it's a singular building. This is all within the pre-application, and for that we also have a simplified calculator so that they can also be supported in this very first stage. We don't require an energy audit from their side, as we foresee that the audit will be done by the ESCOs either way in the second phase, so we do not need this at this stage. And after the pre-application is successfully evaluated, then there is a guarantee from our side to the beneficiaries that they will receive a grant if they, of course, implement a project that binds to all the regulations that we mentioned. I mentioned on the slide before. Then there is a process of choosing an ESCO, and I think this is the crucial step for all the projects to create the EPC contract that is beneficial for both sides. And then with this contract and the energy audit done by ESCO, define the scope, costs, and schedule for works defined. Together with the ESCO, the beneficiary applies for the actual subsidy, and then the implementation phase comes, and after the measures are implemented, the subsidy is granted and is passed from beneficiaries to the ESCOs as their own contribution, and then the EPC duration lasts. And after a year of the monitoring, we implement our measure, so the financing mechanism, the purchase of receivables, and of course the monitoring continues and the EPC duration continues as well. So I mentioned that this on the slide, it's a barriers. I would say it's a challenges, but also sometimes opportunities. And in cases that we saw, this could mix. Sometimes the same thing is a challenge in one case and an opportunity for others. And I think, well, starting from my first point, you can see how I see this. So I mentioned increasing cost of energy as a barrier and as a challenge. And this may not be that straightforward and counterintuitive, maybe as well, since increasing of cost is usually a benefit for energy efficiency projects. However, in our case, electricity and natural gas costs are rising quite high lately, and also heat partially as well, since the CO2 prices are also increasing. And for the many of the buildings that use individual sources, coal-based individual sources, the increase is not that significant, and thus makes them scared to change to a more to a source that is that costs more at the starting point, and also is increasing in cost quite high. So this is a barrier, especially for projects that have coal at the beginning. And since we do not allow the projects to include within its scope the change to a solid fuel, then also they cannot change to coal at the very end. So economy of this solutions is kind of difficult to manage, and the length of the contract can be very long in those cases. And of course, we also see the rise in costs for modernization works, which is a quite significant barrier. And this is also because how rapidly it happens. In many cases, the costs do not increase year to year, but even like month to month basis. And that's a problem for both ESCOs and beneficiaries at the end. One significant barrier is the low ambitions of building owners, and I would say the existence of additional support programs. Many beneficiaries want to apply for not for a deep renovation, but a smaller scale, for example, only insulation of walls, and in a very limited efficiency of those solutions. And they are looking for grants rather than trying to expand their projects and do something more. And this also is kind of related with the existence of grants and other funding programs that may appear in the future. There are rumors on the market that something will be available. So the beneficiaries, not understanding what the grant will be, but hoping that it will be more than 30% that we offer, they kind of wait and postpone the modernizations for their buildings, even if eventually the grant is not for them, but can be a barrier for them and something that causes them to wait longer and trying to find out for a next funding program. Even on a regional level, it's hard to track for us and for the beneficiaries what is available, and it can be a barrier for them to take on this project. And I would say the sheer existence of the financing should not be a problem, since the model could use the financing as well, since it's working on a market basis. However, in most cases, ESCOs cannot apply for funding in any way, and it's very hard for ESCOs to make road to these grant schemes and to participate in them, or using the EPC contract within those models, which can also be eliminated in case we foresee that in the future those grants will be allowed. Then maybe it's a good way to find a way for those grants to also include the EPC contracts and this kind of financing.
Wait, 2 minutes, please.
Yes, I will make it short. 2, maybe 3 last points. Lack of understanding of the EPC and the complexity of a contract. So, as I mentioned, we're at the beginning of the program. The first pilot projects we want to realize in this form, and we're kind of stress testing our EPC. And as we see it, it's hard to balance the requirements that we have on the EPC, the fact that we want to include all sides, the benefits for all sides, so for the ESCOs and for the beneficiaries, but also the investment fund that essentially buys the receivables based on this contract. So we want to balance the benefits for all sides, but it kind of makes the contract more complex. And especially for smaller entities like a single house, when a single building needs to be renovated, it's hard for them to pay the initial cost to analyze it, to include it, and to get to know the APC, especially since there is very limited knowledge on the market available as of now. I think all of the participants, or most, or 90% of them, do not know the EPC model at all. They need to be introduced to it, and as well as the program and additional funding. So a lot of work needs to be done at the very early stage to make the beneficiaries aware of the benefits of it, and to to engage them in this process. Another part is technical conditions of buildings. On one hand, we want to reach deep renovation of buildings. On the other hand, some buildings, especially that have a historical character, that are under a dedicated inspector that decides whether some works can be done and can essentially limit the scope of works. For those buildings, it can be difficult to reach the targets that we set out in the program, and in general in deep renovation, since there is this limitation of works that can be done on the buildings. This makes those buildings less viable for our program, but also to reach the standards of efficiency that we require them to. And the last thing, the poor quality of energy audits. So we said we do not require audits, but many of the beneficiaries use them at the start, and the quality of those audits is quite poor. Usually there's a lot of mistakes. The audits are quite old, so the level of ambition set out in the audit is also quite low. And even if the building owners have audits and they want to base their knowledge on it, since it's that poor, usually very limited possibility to use them, and essentially the additional audit is required at the early stage as well within the preparation for the program. So that's all from my side. If there are any questions, of course, I'm open to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wojciech. All right. Well, the good thing is that everybody has been listening really carefully, because it is reflected in the chat. The chat has almost began living its parallel life, but which I want to avoid, at least while we are listening to our presenters. But the good thing is that well, we have already a series of questions and also answers popping up there. I'll read those out as we proceed into the discussion part. But until that moment, I would still want us all to listen to what Robert Pernetta from the European Investment Bank has to say about achieving energy efficiency in public sector, especially from the point of view of an institution which has the potential to significantly contribute to improving energy efficiency. So Robert, so the next 15, max 20 minutes are yours, and then we jump into the pool of questions that we already have. I noticed that you already posed a question yourself, so there's plenty to discuss, so go ahead, and we are looking forward to great discussion after that.
Am I now unmuted? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. I just got, anyway, a message. So thank you very much. I will not do slides. I thought I'm going to do a free response, and I'm very happy to be involved in this project because I have been working on energy performance contracting in Poland and Latvia. And more or less, I've been out of this for 2 years. I think one of my last business trips was actually to these two countries on that topic. And I'm happy things have moved. At least this conference is also taking place. So I'm very happy to be here. And we have talked already quite about a lot of things. And I would like to get the topic back on its feet. What is energy performance contracting mainly about? It is not about creative financing. It's not about innovative financing or smart financing. Please don't use these words, because if someone in, I don't know, in Liepāja or someone in a Polish town, Piła, hears this, they rather get scared than thinking this is interesting and simple to manage for them. Energy performance contracting is about guaranteed savings. That's actually what it is about. Somebody undertakes measures in your buildings or just does energy management, and you pay him for the result. That's what it is about. And I think we should not forget about that. I also understand if you're a Lithuanian municipality or a state body, meaning a ministry, or you're the state real estate company, it is about financing, because if you want to take a loan, the Ministry of Finance will tell you, no, there is no fiscal space. So you have to find another way around, and energy performance contracting is an option to do that. And I would say for the municipality, how it is financed at the end shouldn't be an issue. It should be an issue for the ESCO doing the project and the bank behind. And we see in both countries, Latvia and Poland, banks are already into it. Altom has already bought receivables from an ESCO. We have a private fund, LaBIF, doing this. In Poland, PFR, the Polish Development Fund, is doing that. So actually that puzzle piece is there. Interesting, we have the finance in place in both countries. What we're missing are the projects. So usually market works the other way around. You first have projects and then the financing develops. So, but for most of you, this is actually shouldn't be your concern. In both countries, what I see, things are there. So puzzle pieces are there. I like the picture of Martins with the puzzle. In Poland and Latvia, the puzzle pieces are there. What we're still missing is someone putting the puzzle together. In Latvia, what you have a model contract approved by Eurostat and the Central Statistical Office of Latvia. There are 3 countries in Europe that have this. I say 3 countries in Europe because Scotland left in the meanwhile. So there are 2 countries in the EU that have a Eurostat approved model contract. And one of them is Latvia. Unfortunately, that contract, then Corona came and other changes came, never saw really the light of the day to become active. So that is there. And it went very fast, the approval. So any future approvals to changes to this model contract actually shouldn't take very long going to Luxembourg, to Eurostat. It's also Eurostat doesn't have to approve every single contract, also not the statistical office. We have worked, and I have been involved in this model contract. We also have worked a bit on a methodology. If you keep in specific parameters, then all these contracts should be off balance sheet, and then they don't touch the fiscal space. Neither of Latvia when it reports to the Commission about the Maastricht criteria, nor in the debt of the municipality. And I think that's good. I think we have a bit of a confusion in both countries about EPC versus PPP. And I don't like to see these things as 2 different ones, like as antagonism. They are very similar. They have a lot of similarities. And EPCs are much smaller, much lighter than PPPs. And in PPPs is a good reason to ask for, is it actually cheaper than the public sector doing it itself? What's the value for money and so on? But in an EPC, somebody comes and gives you a guarantee. You pay less or the same as before, and I changed this. And if I don't perform, I don't get my money. Why do I have to do a public-private sector comparator? Why do I have to do a value for money assessment? I have the value for money. And quite often, the option is either I do it with EPC or I don't do it at all. Then the public-private comparator is actually done. This is a bit simplistic. So therefore, I would say in Latvia, some of the elements of PPP should be used because you have the procedure in place and you procured your first PPP, which was a big road, so much bigger than an EPC would be. But I would say a lot of the additional administrative rules should not be used. And there is a fear, if you can do PPP, so can build whatever you want and you pay it over the next years, this is driving inflation, there is a risk on the budget and so on. I agree on that. But actually with EPC, you don't have that. When you're afraid EPC is driving inflation, then you should rethink your grants. Everybody knows from when you get a grant from your home owning things, the offers are usually a bit more expensive when there is an EU grant involved. In energy performance contracting, the contractor will not charge you more for the boiler because he is only paid by the savings. So I would say EPC is rather a tool that keeps your inflation down. And if the prices for construction rise too much, ESCOs will just not apply anymore. So it's rather inflation kills the ESCO market than ESCO driving the inflation. I'm very happy to discuss this with a macroeconomist because so far I have only done this in my head without economic modeling. But I think a common sense approach would give you that answer. There is one, I'm going through the arguments that were mentioned by, now the name is gone, yes, sorry. They were mentioned before, the response of the government, and I also mentioned already some of them. About grants. I absolutely don't like grants versus EPC. I know this is how it is in reality for most of them, because grants is what you're used to. Ground rules are clear. EPC, you don't have a proper regulatory basis. It's complicated, it's new. I prefer this. But I talked with colleagues in the European Commission, and actually we have written a guide on how to combine structural funds and energy performance contracting with the Commission. And they are now in Brussels think, well, if I give a grant for a works contract, a traditional construction contract, or purchase of boiler, okay, this is good, there is competition, it will not be too expensive, but nobody gives me guarantee that the boiler is set correctly. I talked with the Austrian counterpart of VNI, the real estate company. They say, you know, before we had EPC as the standard solution, we went into the cellar of the building, 80% of the boilers were either still in factory settings or never changed after the building was put in place. They say, if we just do energy management on existing schools or universities and so on, we get energy savings from average 15% without putting any investment in there. And that is saving cash to the municipality. This is also fiscal space. We only look at investment. Fiscal space is also how much do I spend every month. And if you can save money on your heating bill, you can use the money for your kindergarten or for your salaries and other things that are really more important for your population than this. But you waste your money because your equipment is not managed properly. I think this is a very important point, what we should keep in mind. Now, there is the challenge of how do I procure this? And unfortunately, what I hear, a municipality or a hospital is used to order a builder, and they're used to order a service company. Now you put both contracts together and you have construction and service together, and suddenly it becomes 4 times more complicated as 2 contracts. And that should not be like that. And looking at the examples of some bigger cities that have done that, I said, oh, our first procurement was a total nightmare. It took us 2 years or 3 years. And I said, was it so difficult? Well, A, we didn't really know what we wanted and we were discussing all the time, and we are used, once we do the contract, we still can change things. So actually, most of it was the internal learning process. And the second contract, the procurement took 6 months or 9 months. I understand that a city like Jelgava, which is in the room, is going to renovate its schools once. And they say, if this is 4 times as complicated than hiring a facility manager and hiring a construction company, I don't want to do this. And I don't want Jelgava or Liepāja to reinvent the wheel. Riga can go through this circle, because until Riga has done all its schools, this will take some time. And there has to be someone in between. And we have fantastic models. I see what CAPE proposes there. We have a good model in Belgium that actually there is a national agency that hires the facilitators. They help the municipality to write the terms of reference. And then the facilitator helps the municipality to do the tender, and they help them in the procurement procedure. And you know how much that costs? Relatively little, because you can cover 90% from an ELENA facility in Belgium. And only 10% has to be paid by the municipality. And they say, well, that's actually then as expensive as my normal procurement, or even cheaper. So there has to be really a sweetener in there to make it attractive. And I tell you, in other countries, in the Czech Republic or so, which has a really well-functioning market, municipalities don't know how to do EPC, but they are consultants doing it for them. And at the end of the day, this pays off for them. What we really, really need for the market, for EIB to think about how we finance this, how private sector coming in, for international ESCOs going to Latvia or Poland, local companies expanding to ESCO business, is we need a clear political signal. We want this. I have to say I have done 2 assignments in Latvia, one with VNI and one with the Ministry of Economics. But there is always a strong hesitation to move forward. And nobody is going to move really if there is no clear political signal. I would say both countries, Poland and Latvia, should have a Mr. ESCO, someone in the government, and he says, I do this. And if you have problems with procurement, with state aid, come to me. and I put the team together that fixes it. And if I have to call somebody in Brussels and complain about their stupid rules, or if I have to call somebody in Luxembourg, EIB, to help, there should be someone. There is a way how, for example, you can use EU funds for EPC projects. It's possible that a municipality applies for the grant because once they know they get 30% grant for the project, they know how the tender looks like. Because before you know if you get a grant or not, you actually don't know what you order. And then after the tender is awarded, the ESCO becomes the ESCO and becomes the beneficiary. The ESCO has the payment for the stuff. The ESCO has the invoices. And if they mess it up, it's the ESCO's problem. Because there is always the risk of, I don't get my grant because I forgot the right stamp. And as municipalities, you don't have the invoice. It's the ESCO that has the invoice. This is a stress factor. This is possible. Nobody is using it, and nobody is asking the question to the Commission, is an EPC a PPP? Because the rule is made for PPPs. I'm a bit frustrated because I asked already several countries to ask the question. Me, as EIB, I can't do this. I can help to ask the question. Probably then I have to help the Commission to answer the question, but somebody has to ask the question. So we have tools out there, and somebody finally has to pick them up. And I mean, this is what we need with the puzzle. And it's good to have one person you can go to and say, okay, I'm taking this forward. And I think I want to congratulate VIPA. Our colleague has forgot to mention one thing, and I have to say this as being from EIB. They were helped by the JASPERS facilities, which is paid by the European Commission, Rolandas, and managed by EIB. And also the preparation of projects is supported by Elena. And I think we really have to work together. And this is also why I proposed Rolandas to speak, because I think for someone in Latvia or Poland, you rather believe someone who does this on the ground and tells about what is not working than having somebody speaking for the European Commission or the EIB and telling you this is the best thing since sliced bread and you will have no problems, because unfortunately it's not like that. I learned from 2 cities, the second EPC is easy. If you as Jurmala never will have a second one, I'm sorry, then somebody else has to do this hard learning process. And I think this is all from my side, and I'm open then for answering the questions later on. Thank you very much. Paldies, dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much indeed, Robert. I think that was already a very nice summary of our most important things indeed. And it's good you clarified the pros and cons, or the differences rather, of this the PPP versus EPC approach, and the important differences, which sometimes amount only to the perception, to how we see things, or how public bodies who have to be involved or get involved in energy efficiency see these processes. So right you are that grants are one thing, and I've done some research as part of my my PhD studies as well, that this indeed is confusing, and grants make people think that if I know that there is going to be a grant available sometime in the future, I'll most likely wait until that grant is indeed available. But when is that time? Nobody exactly knows. The time usually comes, but then it exacerbates the costs. It also somehow shakes the labor market. Suddenly, suddenly you need many people in the construction sector. Suddenly the prices are up for labor, for materials, for the work. So it indeed contributes to, well, not only to inflation, but also contributes to the perception that, well, energy efficiency is something that is only available when there is EU money around. So let's go counter-cyclic, and let's work against the cycle and introduce all these things that are already in place that probably we have not used so far. So EPC definitely is, as you I think rightly said, EPC is rather a solution to these cyclic events than yet another factor contributing to that. So all right. So indeed, it was Robert who actually initiated to go ahead with with questions in the chat while the presentations are ongoing, and this invitation has succeeded. So I'll begin with briefly going through what we have already in the chat, although most of you might have already noticed that. But let's see, there was an interesting comment by Jānis Ozoliņš. He basically writes that there is a very limited number of EPCs in public databases, and at the same time, taxonomy refers to top 15% of national stock. So can it be expected that there is a common approach to what are the criteria to qualify as these top 15%? And for example, he gives an example that all buildings built after 2010 primary energy demand of well, X kilowatt hours per square meter, etc. So would it help to finance sector and investors to divert more funds towards energy efficiency buildings? Because otherwise investors will prefer to invest in other countries where there is no too much space for interpretation or being afraid of what the rules really are. I see that Martins has come online live. Martins, I believe you could provide us with a comment here.
I did indeed, but can you please repeat the question?
So the question was from Jānis Ozoliņš in the chat. So what about these 15 top % in the taxonomy, 15% of national stock, and can it be expected that there is a common approach? What are criteria to qualify as top 15% of national stock?
Yes, as you know, taxonomy is a work in progress. Oftentimes, there are specific delegated acts which are issued to clarify, which go into more depth than the taxonomy as published for now. I would not be in a position to tell you whether this is in the works to be further clarified, but I could come back to this question. I could check with my colleagues in DG FISMA who are working, and indeed the expert group, the relevant expert group who's working on this, whether that's something that the more uniform rules would be forthcoming.
All right, so that at least clarifies the status currently. Thank you, Martins. There's another, I'll simply read out the questions in the order of appearance. So the next comment was, or question rather, of a rather general nature, but still very valid question from Andrzej from Poland. In which country do we have the best regulation for ESCOs currently? Who would be willing to comment on that? Robert, go ahead. If that was a yes sign. Please, you're muted, you're muted.
I get muted. I give you now a cheeky answer on this. The best regulation has the US, actually none. But I know this does not work in countries like Poland or Latvia. One of the issues why the public sector had problems procuring EPC in Poland, there was no legal basis. I think there is good, quite a good system in the Czech Republic. Czech Republic has a very good ESCO market by now. They have a good facilitation market, and nobody in the Czech Republic talks about regulation. They get EU grants into their projects. I have still not figured out how they do it. So things are running there, and one should look at them. And one should not regulate too much. In Bulgaria, they have interpreted the EU rule and they focused on the financing. So they say, if €1 of public grant is in an EPC, it's not an EPC anymore. And you ask them why? Well, this is written in the regulation. Well, no, it's not, but somebody put this innovative finance and so on, and this derailed the whole thing. Really, I think the Czech model is quite good, and hopefully it's from the legal system not too far from the Polish one. And in Germany, also nobody talks about regulation, or Austria. It's just working. So either the regulation is so good or they just don't need it. Don't look at the UK, they have a completely different legal system. So you will, or America, you will not get lucky with that one.
Yes, I think it's a valid comment indeed. You referred basically to a situation where the market drives the solutions, basically, which is probably the ideal option, that you don't have to be specifically well fostering something, because there is demand and there is supply and there is a solution to that. How do you get together financing with the ones who need the financing? So indeed, Yannick also commented briefly on this, that do we really always need a law, or is it just the wise policy making and awareness that we need a solution to a situation, and here is a solution? So it's probably a valid question. Obviously, we are used to having everything set out in regulations and rules, so that there is absolute clarity as about all situations in life. But yeah, we'll see how this might work out for us. Most likely we are going in the direction of having regulations, and rather clear regulations about these, about how we can implement EPCs, and hopefully we'll be able to implement EPC principles in real life. Right, so there was also an exchange of questions and answers after the presentation from a Lithuanian colleague who had plenty of factual material in his presentation. So there was a question whether a lower grant element tends to increase the EPC interest. So the comment was also that finding the appropriate balance of grants, where grants are required, and EPC is essential for further EPC development. And that was a comment and a question altogether from Nils from Denmark. And Rolandas actually replied to that. I'm not sure if I need to read this out, but basically he said that if the grant is significantly high, like covers roughly 50-70% of the project, the developers still view this funding collectively as grant funding, and here the same problem is simply funding the grant. But Rolandas, maybe you want to add anything to what all you've already written to in the chat.
Yes, I want to add our approach that I not written, that used structural fund programming period are limited, and the building owners know that, and waiting. They know that the government should invest this money, and they wait. And some in Lithuania, in some case, wins with building owners, which was waiting for biggest subsidy, and I think it's bad experience that we start with rethink and boost subsidies intensives, and sometimes we looked to financial regulation. We should invest money.
All right, thank you, Rolandas, for your comments. All right, there was also a question by Robert once again regarding the situation in Poland. He was asking, is Poland considering off-balance sheet treatment of its EPC in public buildings? There could probably be difficulties with the scheme as it is presented. It was the question to Wojciech. Wojciech, are you able to come in with your answer and comment?
Yes, so my answer is not only considering, but also it's already implemented, at least I would say partially. So as of now, the last amendment to the Energy Efficiency Act in April 2021 implemented the change stating that it is the EPC is used in the public sector should be off balance sheet in case they split the risks or the major risks of the investments are on the ESCO side, and this is already in place in the regulations. However, those also on the national level are interpreted by the local fiscal entities, and those interpretations can be different depending on the region to region, and this is what we're trying to work on now. So this is a place where National Fund and the Ministry of Environmental Protection is on climate and environmental protection is working on. So trying to make this regulation that is working on the national level to also be unifically interpreted on the local level, since the idea of the regulation was to make it off balance sheet, not to over regulate it, just to make one point that it should be if the risks are split as they should be in the EPC, but this is not working on the local level, and this is the work we put in now in Poland.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. It's interesting that well, that has been one of the main reasons why also public bodies are not keen to embrace the idea of EPC in Latvia, in fact. So we are looking very much forward to learning from those who are pioneering in this respect. So it will be interesting to see whether we can move ahead with EPC also for public sector. And well, it is of course the balance sheet question, whether that money is defined as debt. So which way is that money defined? So investment in sustainability should probably have a slightly different approach. So yes, there was a question from Jan Dowski to everyone. What about hybrid UE funds or PPP operations? And I'm not sure if I correctly, probably he refers to a specific project. I don't know if you, Wojciech, are familiar with the situation or could comment on that as well. There was a in the chat.
Yeah, so I think maybe it's referred to the point I was making about the difficulty of the existence of the grants and making it difficult for our work. What I meant is the existence of it should not be a significant barrier, but some specific rules within those mechanisms make it so that the EPC is hard to use or difficult to use. What I was thinking of a solution or something that maybe could be implemented is to somehow show when you operate a grant or some kind of a support, show specifically a road for EPCs to be used with this grant or whatever kind of support it is used, so that it's easier for the beneficiaries to see that this is also an option with this mechanism.
Thank you for the comments. It's actually interesting because Jan has also made another comment which speaks about something he calls his name the reverse PPP, where a public-owned company delivers EPC to private building owners. As an example, if the municipality is an owner or at least co-owner of a district heating company, then there might be some space for activity. But I'm not sure. It's interesting comments. Who would like to comment on that? Robert?
Yeah, well, I'd like to come on the hybrid okay, EPC. This is how it's called in Poland. It's the hybrid one, when you have partly grant and partly classical PPP. Yes, these are very good cases. The point is, it's difficult to have a hybrid PPP for energy efficiency. So a hybrid energy efficiency PPP off balance sheet. And I don't want to now go into details because that's complicated. And I hope using this PPP exception that you make the ESCO the beneficiary after it was awarded. I think this should be a way to make it easier. I talked to the colleagues in the commission, make sure your grants don't discriminate ESCOs. And they said, yes, in the operational program, there is written ESCOs are permitted. There is no discrimination. Then you go into the details of when do you have to apply, when are you paid, what documents do you have to deliver, and so on. And suddenly at the end of the day, ESCOs are excluded. And that can't be the role of the European Commission to read every single call text in the member states. And that's also what I mean. There has to be the Mr. ESCO in each country or Mr. EPC who says, we look at the cost. Are you not deliberately? I don't believe anybody's deliberately prosecuting ESCOs, but it just happens because this is the rules we always used. The Czech Republic is quite radical in this point. They say, if you go for EPC, you get 10 basis points more grant. So for your project, get 30%. If you use for EPC, you get 40%. This is a quite radical step, but I think the first step is make sure you don't discriminate. I believe EPC for the projects that can be done via EPC is better. You don't have to give them additional incentives, but please remove the barriers. The idea of heating companies operating EPCs, actually, this is quite a lot of done in Germany and Austria. One of the leading companies in Austria is Stadtwerke Innsbruck. So they also do other things. You just, what I heard from other countries, you get into trouble with the whole issue of regulated asset base. When you are the operator of a heating network, of an electricity network, and so on, you have energy efficiency obligation. You would like to do EPC, and suddenly the regulator says, no, the cost to set this up, you're not allowed to put on the energy price. You don't have other money, so you're just losing money. I don't know if this is national regulation or EU. This is a bit beyond my understanding, but I just learned this. A Bulgarian district heating company tried it, and they just got into trouble with it. So there has to be some regulatory work done. But in Germany, for example, it works.
Oh, thank you. It's a valuable comment indeed on this. I hadn't thought myself about that, but probably it's a situation which, I mean, it's a very practical situation, and probably there is a solution to that. Right. So if we move forward to the end of the existing comment line, then there's a question from Zintas Grasmanis, a very simple question on how many ESCO companies are there in Lithuania and in Poland? Somebody might be in a position to answer that.
So maybe I can answer for Poland. So it's hard to say, but I think we're building the market, and the companies that identify themselves as ESCOs are not always the same that actually do the ESCO kind of contracts. Maybe to give you an overview what you can expect, there's a list of ESCO companies in Poland on the ministerial sites that states that there are 25 companies there on this list. However, the ESCO to ESCO, it's kind of different, the area of operation, and of course not all ESCOs that could be considered ESCOs are there, and on the other hand, some ESCOs that are there are not actually working on the ESCO side, but they want to show themselves to be an ESCO, so that maybe there's a new area of operations for them available as well.
Thank you, Wojciech. Anybody wants to comment on Lithuania? I know that Latvia has very few. I'm not going into more detail.
Yeah, Rolandas, please.
Yeah, in Lithuania and pure ESCO, no, I think no, maybe one company represented via ESCO, but in our meetings we saw 3-5 companies that be interested in this business and want to plan companies' activities for future perspective. We believe in this model, but there are many issues.
Right. Thank you, Robert. You wanted to comment?
Yeah, actually, we did a bit of this showcasing or getting an ESCO attracted to Latvia. I did this exercise, and I have contacts to the European ESCO Association, both of them, and also individual ESCOs, and Honeywell, Siemens, ENGIE, and so on, didn't even bother to respond, which was very frustrating. Nevertheless, there was a Norwegian company and a Finnish company, and the Finnish company is already doing energy management in Latvia, and they already also do construction in Lithuania, so more complex. And also the Norwegian company has an office in Riga. They said, you know, if the pipeline is big enough, and if we understand that there is a good regulatory basis and we know how to finance these things, we have a look at it. So I think when we did the same exercise for Lithuania or Poland, and we talked to Siemens and Engie, we got about the same response as for Latvia. They say, oh, this is a strategic decision making that has to be done in America or Switzerland and blah, blah, blah. But you have the leading ESCO of Finland. For them, Latvia is an interesting market. And the guy from Norway said, it's very good that Riga is so close. You know, last time I had a project in the north of Norway and I took even longer to fly there. So I think this is important. We have to find the right ESCOs, and also, of course, supporting local ESCOs. And in Poland, there is now the idea to set up something like a super ESCO. And I can't tell you more because we just got the request in and we're very, very early. So if there are not enough companies, they say, I can manage the risk. You can build another structure that can manage the risk, but the construction has to be done by a construction company, the energy management by an energy company, the equipment be bought and maintained by someone else. So this is a way we're now trying, and let's see if this works out. And then hopefully there will be so much competition that we don't need the super ESCO anymore.
Yeah. But actually, a quick comment from my side. And would you say, Robert, that the scale is important? Of course, the smaller the scale, the higher the risk that bigger companies might not be interested in this market. But would you say that's crucial and absolutely necessary to be, say, bundling together projects in bigger packages, which has been indicated as one of the problems, also by local administration, that, well, we don't deal with small projects. It's not worth the time and money.
We need two things. We need first a pipeline of projects. Any foreign ESCO will not open and establish a team in Latvia if they don't see deals coming, because it's normal. You have procurement. If there is only one deal, the probability that you win it, let's say, is 30%. It's not worth the effort to set up a team. But once I know there is a pipeline of deals coming, 10 procurements are going to come. And this is why we were happy to start with VNI, because they can make 10 sizable procurements. Then they are interested. Then also financiers are interested because they need a portfolio. So we need a pipeline. And the size of the project is also, and this is something, to find the right size of the project, you have to discuss with the ESCOs. I mean, I see that in the chat we have Lighthouse from Latvia. They can do quite small lighting projects. So they say, don't put several cities together, several street lights. This is too complicated. I like one client. I can do quite small deals. Whereas the Norwegian company says, no, I would like to have sizable. And then we also discussed, how should the bundle be? They say geography doesn't matter. They're Norwegian, so geography doesn't matter. They're used to other scales. They say, but I want to have schools in one bundle. The other type of building in the other bundle. So because it's the same technology, the same type of construction you do, please don't try to be clever and think this in your office in Riga, Luxembourg, Brussels, and so on. Talk to the market. Because if you do a tender and nobody applies, this is super frustrating. Happened to many, and this is really frustrating.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So there was an earlier comment by Nils that it is essential to combine the EU funds and other grants and the EPC market. So it's he speaks basically about the cumulative effects of different sources of available funding, and which basically seconds what I said in the introduction and what other speakers have in a way also supported. So I wonder if there are questions from our other participants of today's discussion who have been quiet so far. The floor is open. Please go ahead. Just raise your hand, and I'll deliver the message. Currently, I don't see any hands raised, but this bundling issue, or Ralph, did you want to comment something if you came online in the camera?
Yes, I would like to comment.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you to all presenters. Very, very valuable information and discussion. And for those who may not know us, we are doing ESCOs for ESCO projects for lighting in particular. It can be in both segments, public or private. So in last 2 years, we have done about 50 contracts in Latvia in the public sector, different kinds of buildings, sports halls, university, and street lighting in particular. So what I would say is that when it comes to achieving these larger goals, so no project is small, because in order to fill the tank, so every even small drop would add to the end result. And when it comes to lighting, and many speakers mentioned, so it's always important to measure the results. And I think when it comes to lighting, it is probably the easiest, let's say, segment where you can clearly measure before and after results. So I fully understand the big picture of going for the building renovations and all those things. It is all important, yeah. But even just a start, maybe as a pilot project, yeah, for lighting only. So it's in my opinion, it's rather easy to do. So if anybody has an idea, big or small, let us know, and we would be happy to help with our experience, advice, and practical solutions.
Right, thank you, Rose. Yes, probably the situations might be different situations there. You know, well, it's not necessarily that you have to have well, a huge ESCO company which works on a global scale. It could also be very local, which targets particular solutions and particular clients and groups of clients. It's just probably the matter of availability of financing or co-financing for those who want to implement these measures. So, of course, well, bundling together probably is not the ideal solution. The ideal solution is, as you, Robert, said, is a pipeline rather of projects. Would you see that there is a need from the side of well, administration or administrative bodies to somehow formalize the system of management of well, of EPCs or potential clients for EPC services? Or do you think it is enough if there is a market and it organizes itself? I lost Robert. Oh, well, I hope he's still there, but right. Is there anybody who would like to comment on this well, necessity to bundle projects to achieve the scale to be worth really thinking about creating a project team or something? Are there any experiences? What we would say from Polish experience is bundling something that constitutes a barrier?
So from my experience, and I think as Robert mentioned as well, it's depending on the project and on the ESCO. I think to attract larger ESCOs, as Robert said, you would require this kind of bundling. And as we can see, for some ESCOs that or some companies that want to work in an ESCO model, so they so far they did renovations, but on a work kind of based model. Not in an ESCO type contract, so they are willing to take part of an ESCO, but for them some projects are too big to be realized, especially if they want to start off. So for those projects, I would say small examples are also smaller projects are also good if you want to develop a scale and let the smaller ESCO learn as well from the local market. So from that perspective, we saw that some ESCOs were kind of worried that the projects are too large and our requirements for deep renovations are too scary for them to start. And even it was I think in some presentation mentioned that at least 10 million euros are a threshold for ESCOs to be interested, and for us it's like 1/10 of that or even less. It's 250,000 zlotys, so you can divide that by 4 more or less, and you get the euro value. And it's still for them to large 1 million zlotys project, so 250,000 euros or even less. It's too large, and they are scared to start. So to build an let's say a group of smaller ESCOs as well, you need those smaller projects as well to start off. So I would say do not close off, but the more projects you have, the better it is for the market, essentially.
Good. Right. I'm not sure if Robert, did you want to comment something, add to that?
Yeah, sorry, I had to briefly go away. This is the problem when you have a baby at home. Well, we talked about the bundling, and I fully agree with Wojciech. It is really, you have to do it in accordance with the market. It doesn't help you if you do a tender and then only Siemens applies, then you don't have a competition, and then you don't get the right price, and also not too small. One problem for ESCOs is the financing. Smaller ESCOs, once they do a project, they have to wait 10 years until it gets repaid. They don't have the balance sheet for that. And there we come in with the financing. There is a way how to get this off the balance sheet. We mentioned this forfeiting or refinancing. And I was looking for an example where, for example, we talk about taxonomy and so on. A green bond has been used to finance an EPC. I found one example in Italy when I saw the interest rate of that bond. I almost fell over because it's 6%, and that's very expensive financing. And the second example I found is the green bond issued by Alto, which was used to refinance an ESCO. So if you think in Latvia, you're not there yet, in some things you are the front runner in Europe. What is important? You have to have a pilot project. And I have to say, the Czechs are very clever in this. The Slovenians are very clever in this. In the Czech Republic, the first really big EPC was the National Theatre. And it's quite advanced because they use the river to cool the building, it's right at the river. Who knows the National Theatre? And the EPC contract has now ended. And they do the next EPC contract. Even there is not much investment needed, but they say this was fantastic. And we worked on having interviews with the people in the theater, and like the actors say, you know, I remember how it was before. This part was dark and you were afraid in this corridor to run into something. And here it was drafty, and now we have good light and so on. This is important. This is what people like. In Slovenia, they use it's a place where schools go for nature school, or green school it's called in Slovenia. Almost every Slovenian has been there, and they turned this building where the students sleep, where they cook, and they go for nature activities and so on. They turned this building into a net zero energy building with 40% EU grant, but using EPC, having an ESCO doing this. And everybody knows the building, and everybody has good memories from his childhood. And when you visit the building, and I have visited it, these people say, this is fantastic. Our life is so much easier. We're happy with the ESCO most of the time. They say it's PPP, it's a partnership, it's like marriage. It's not always sunshine. There are conflicts. They had the problem that that their internet broke down because they had a storm, and then there was no remote control anymore over their boiler and so on. But they found a solution. So this is also important, that you trust the ESCO to find a solution. And one room was always overheated where the ESCO did wrong, until the ESCO said, did you cut the trees in front of that training room? So then they agreed additional shading is installed on the cost of the client, because the client changed actually the building. But it was done in a dialogue. And I think this is important. Of course, if you don't have examples, it's difficult to have trust. I'm fully aware. If you are a city manager, do you trust a foreign company? Do you trust a new company? But the trust have to be built, and please select a good, I call it now, select a sexy pilot. This is better than calling things smart, intelligent, or something. Have a good pilot, and people can see the building, can see the boiler room, and say, wow, this is good.
Good. Well, there was actually an interesting comment earlier in the chat from Rolandus, who, well, speaking of how public bodies perceive anything that is related to improving energy efficiency, and I'm quoting now, public building owners, everything that is not typical, a typical construction project is a scary beast. And Rolandus, could you elaborate a little bit on that? Is this has this been a problem in your experience, and do you think there are good ways how to tackle that?
In our experience, for example, in small municipalities, we do construction by own budgets and feel more less regulated from central government. So when central government send consultants and want to control to good project, we think it's easier to do in easier way, that we know process, we know procedures, and it's silence. No problems, no issues with, for example, construction fails, and I think that is the problem. The new models in small municipalities, if the major is not proactive, that it's hard to facilitate this project.
Right. All right. Yeah. Well, obviously this is indeed a problem, but well, my educated guess would be that with the well, not only with the discussion and providing more information, probably also educating members of public administration about these things, that might, well, the situation might change towards more positive, and this perception of renovation or ESCO as an evil beast might disappear, because anything that you invest in energy efficiency basically makes the building and living in that building more sustainable, be it private or be it public, and especially public, because public building serves the serves or should serve public interests. So, and it's financed normally from public money. So it means that every euro that we invest in the energy efficiency of public buildings basically is saving well, many more euros from public spending, from public budgets. So that's probably a very simple idea, a very simple conclusion there. Yes, Rolandus.
I wanted to add our experience. Before WIPA, I was building maintenance engineer and worked in the public sector and what the problem about energy consumption and budgets for energy invoices. Public bodies get budgets for energy, and what is if the winter is soft. In December, you're right, the limit of invoices of energy and when the winter ends, you count and ask municipality for more money in spring in the next accounting year. And there's the problem. In the summer we found this money, and then we have new line for energy invoices. It's a big problem. But winter is and winter and financial closes is in December.
Well, indeed, yes. It's there are some paradoxes in the that are related to the principles of accounting in bookkeeping in public administration, indeed. But probably that is changing, and also public administration is becoming more flexible and acts according to rational solutions rather than formal solutions. Right, there was also an interesting comment once we were, well, Robert was mentioning that you need a good pilot project, and referred to one particular project, and Einar Stilinskis, who is from the Ministry of Economy, investing his time in many things. He actually mentioned National Concert Hall for Latvia. That could be probably an interesting project, which is currently, the decision has been made to renovate or refurbish, basically, fundamentally refurbish an older building built during the Soviet times and turn it into a national acoustic concert hall. That might be actually quite an interesting project indeed. I'm not sure how willing would the government and also the regional municipality be to present it and see it and implement it as a pilot project for probably EPC, or at least partial EPC or hybrid project, but that might be an interesting suggestion indeed. Right, are there any questions? Probably many people have been listening carefully and reading the comments, but have not come up with questions. Maybe there are any questions that have come up. Please go ahead and ask. The time is right. Robert, you can comment. Go ahead if you wish.
I was just going through the list of participants. So,
what was I?
What was your last statement? I'm sorry.
No, it's actually good. I thought, well, we have quite a broad representation among the participants of the event, and the last thing I want to do is to point my finger at any of the names, and I'm just trying to encourage questions or comments here. And of course, I'd be happy if anybody from any of the state institutions represented today here would at least reflect the immediate thoughts on what has been discussed so far, on bundling the projects, on combining more eagerly grants with EPCs, on the current and possibly, well, potentially future role of ESCOs, which so far has been quite limited, and whether public administration sees ESCOs as a problem still, or do they see ESCOs as partners that might actually be quite integral to the task of achieving climate goals, achieving energy efficiency goals 2030 and beyond that. I see that if ESCOs and EPC system really works, it can contribute significantly. Otherwise, if the market is if the activity on the energy efficiency market is not escalated soon, then I personally do not see how we can achieve, in Latvia at least, the energy efficiency goals. Anybody? I'm looking now at the list of participants. I'll be pointing fingers if nobody jumps in for me. Martin, I'm addressing Martin Zemits now. You've been listening. You were the first speaker today, and you presented the framework that the EC has provided for energy efficiency financing. Do you have any comments so far from what you've heard after you have been speaking?
Thank you, Reinis. Yes, I've been listening very attentively. I think this is a very important discussion to have. More important, however, than to talk is to do. So
Sure.
I certainly hope that after today's discussion, we'll have a set of concrete, actionable items to work on. Of course, EPC is not a panacea. We will need to have different types of solutions for different types of projects. It will not be one size fits all for sure. But I think from the Lithuanian example, from the pilot projects and the scheme set up, and I think from the Polish example that we saw, of course, Poland has a bit of a different scale than the Baltics, but regardless, I think there are some valuable lessons to be learned about, especially I think about the sort of the benefits, but also the drawbacks of using the grants and using the grants at high intensity. I think Poland has been one of the pioneers in Europe, which in fact has voluntarily decreased the support intensity, lower grants, in fact, and then when you have less guaranteed money, where a lot of public bodies and also private bodies tend to get used to and kind of tend to get dependent on. And also the project promoters, I wouldn't want to say get a little bit more lazy, but of course, when you have absolutely free money, then you probably don't look perhaps so carefully at the sort of rates of return, or whether you really want to do the project of a certain scale or not, or whether you want to achieve certain savings or not. So I think this is an important lesson for everyone. In fact, that yes, public money, be it municipal, national, European, serves a useful role to play when there is a market gap. It can serve to help with technical assistance. It can help setting up the scheme, intervene where useful. But of course, maintaining a high rate of public support can oftentimes be detrimental to projects. So I think that's definitely one takeaway. This is also a message that we've been preaching from the Commission side in and out. I think another takeaway from this discussion that at least I take away is that often you don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think most of these projects are not so unique and so complex, and also the Latvian legal setup is not so different from Lithuania's or Poland's or for that for Czech Republic's. Start with a pilot project. I think Latvia is well on the way. There are some pilot projects which have, there are some lessons learned that you take from them, and you see how you can scale up. I mean, I think the discussion in Latvia is still out there, whether ESCO model can work, for things like lighting and water and deployment of renewables, what we have seen, or whether this is a model that we can sort of use more widely and apply to multi-apartment buildings. But then again, measured against the challenge that you have, especially in large cities like Riga, where you hardly see any renovation projects for that matter. I think many of the cities that Robert has mentioned in his comments are much further along the way than the capital, in fact, which is somewhat telling. I think that's an important takeaway. So that's that. I think we have a lot of learning to do, a lot of lessons to internalize. I think we can really learn from the Polish and Lithuanian examples. These are good, interesting schemes. I think there's lots of good detail that has transpired, and I certainly hope that that contributes to the understanding of all parties and also to the political buy-in, which regardless, I mean, I completely second Robert's message that you need to have sort of political patronage or sort of support at the highest level for this. Otherwise, at the technical level or at the level of implementing agencies, we can we can do a great deal. But of course, this has to be a big priority, a national level priority. And if it's not, then it will be somewhat challenging. Yeah. So that's where I would probably stop.
Very valuable indeed, Martin. And all the speakers except for Raimons have already been engaged in well, very dynamic debate. But Raimons, I believe you might also add to something that you previously already presented, especially after what other colleagues have already said.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I also found this very valuable. Robert's clarifications on things, and I hope this reached some ears as well, because totally agree that there currently, if the politicians say that there is no capacity in existing apparatus, then there must be some changes done, and there must be somebody who is in charge of this. So there is this lack of leadership, and it feels like there's a lack of motivation and lack of consequences. And if somebody will be in charge who will actively communicate with the European Commission, with Eurostat on the issues, then I think that that would make a difference. Also about bundling, of course, it makes sense for large companies to talk about bundled projects, but the reality is that the way it is done in Latvia, we don't do it 10 buildings or 15 buildings at once. So basically it's done building by building, and buildings differ one from another. And there are actually ESCOs, wannabe ESCO companies who are capable doing one building and one project at a time, and would be willing to start doing it right away. But if we will say that we can only start implementing EPCs in Latvia when somebody is able to undertake 10 million project, then we can, I don't think it's going to happen that soon. So yeah, thank you everybody. Thank you Wojciech and Rolandus as well. Valuable lessons learned from you, and let's hope it makes a difference. Thank you.
Yes, but before we wrap up our discussion, we still have a moment of time as we have to finish. Well, I'd say let's go for some 10 minutes more, especially if there are things to say. I announced a warning that I'll be pointing fingers into the direction of the list of participants. I know that there are people from the Ministry of Finance of Latvia present in this virtual room, and I would actually be happy to know if they might be willing to comment briefly on this very interesting issue of basically putting the expense of investment in energy efficiency as off balance sheet. So about this tricky thing of keeping the books right and not making the rules of accounting a barrier for energy efficiency. I think that's quite an important point here, and that's one of the barriers that public institutions or owners of public buildings might actually face. Are you in a position? I think Gusts was there and Leva was here as well. I'm not sure. I hope you have been listening and following, and some of you could just provide us with a comment. I'm terribly sorry for pointing to you. I'm not sure. Okay, well, probably while they are thinking, there was an example of green bonds as part of the scheme to finance energy performance contracting. Robert, do you see as you said, a sexy option for sustainable investment? Maybe you just need to sell this investment in energy efficiency in a slightly different way.
Well, we're very at the end, you know, that a bond is issued. But let's see it like this, that if I'm someone buying green bonds, I'm a Dutch pension fund, which they are really keen on this. They are green bonds and now they are taxonomy compliant, maybe not in all aspects, so green bonds and so on. I don't want to get into discussion in that.
Okay.
And you know, there can be green bonds. Somebody says, okay, I buy this and this is green because it fulfills taxonomy. If I would have a bond only with ESCO projects, I would have a bonus. The ESCOs can report without much effort to the one who issues the bond how much kilowatt hours and how much CO2 was saved every year. The one who invests in green real estate across Europe, he has absolutely no idea. They have the initial assumption, that's it. So I would say actually, once we have enough volume of ESCO projects in Poland and in Europe, we can make green premium ESCO debt, that the one who invests in this debt has, you know, almost real-time data how much CO2 is saved. But there we still need to go. But the point is, you get you know, 0.2% cheaper money if you do this. But I think this is, which can be already quite interesting. I think before, as long there is not the trust, can the ESCO perform? There is a performance risk. A bank says, I can manage the client risk. The city of XYZ, I know what their risk is. They have almost zero risk. Once the repayment depends on an ESCO, I have performance risk and I'm exposed to the risk of the ESCO. We maybe need a public guarantee for that. And that's what the structural funds can play a role, or RRF or InvestEU. So I think there, and you know, EIB is not only an institution that provides financing, we also provide advisory. We provided advisory to Lithuania, to VIPA, we provided advisory to VNI, we tried to provide advisory to CAPE through the Ministry of Climate, but unfortunately we never found anyone signing the contract, so hopefully we will find another way. We are available. And the worst thing when you ask us is you get sent to an EU grant call, or we say, well, sorry, that's not in the scope. Our access to help from the European Investment Advisory Hub is easy. You send me an email and then you get a yes or a no.
Right, that's fantastic message, really. All you need is an email to Robert, and he might either channel the email, the question to his colleagues, but you can be certain that you'll get a competent answer and comment here, competent advice. So far, I wonder if anybody, because I'm still wondering, there's quite a number of people among participants representing public authorities in Latvia, also and also in Poland, and anyone willing really to at least present the opinion about ESCOs as a significant or important part of the solution to energy efficiency struggles that we have been experiencing so far. Is this the question of perception? Are there any formal barriers in your understanding to participation of ESCOs and the introduction of EPCs on a broader scale? If there is no question, if there are no comments in 10 seconds, I'll switch over to another question myself. Anybody from state administration? Right, so probably, but it's also good to be listening, of course. I hope that this is a good exercise of learning and finding out new things, and probably reminding some other things. But there's Nils, would you like to come online and post your question or comment for all of us? I see that you've commented in the chat. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can just make a comment on the Danish situation. In Denmark, we had quite good experience of bonding the EPC on a municipality level. Also because we have a municipal financing institution that can provide favorable loans. So we saw some quite big EPC projects for quite a big number of municipal buildings, and also allowing quite a big dimension of the deep renovation. But unfortunately, it slowed down the last years, and my own impression is that the reason is that it's not supported enough in the policy by the policy signals. So to me, that shows that it is important that the national administration is behind and sending out the strong signals that this is to happen. And then, of course, as we discussed, all the necessary instruments and stimulation of ESCOs and so on, and developing of the pipelines are important. So that was mainly a comment. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Right. We are moving closer to the end, and in theory, I should be wrapping up the main conclusions. Of course, I think the main conclusions are quite obvious. So there has been insufficient role for EPCs and ESCOs so far. Of course, the markets, or ESCO and EPC markets in the countries in question are diverse. They differ. They are not like the same. They are not copy-paste situations. So there are different factors influencing different situations, but there are some common issues as well. So one thing which I definitely put down in my own notes was this issue of what sort of role really does this bundling of EPC projects play. Do we need to find some sort of formal ways how to make this work, both in situations where there are bigger projects and many projects, and also in situations where there are smaller projects which might not be so interesting for a larger ESCO companies. So basically, the question is how to create a marketplace, not a market itself, but a marketplace rather, how to put the tables, the chairs, I don't know, different surfaces where you could put your produce out and offer for the buyers, how to create this this marketplace so that there is this contracting would be available for smaller, medium-sized, and big ESCOs, so that everybody can find the niche if need be. Because indeed, if you go really only big scale, then that might not contribute to the competition on the market. Vice versa, it might actually limit the competition, and it might be contrary to the goal of making this ESCO market lively, or ESCO involvement in energy efficiency activities more dynamic. So smaller companies might simply not have the, as I think Robert put it, might not have the accounts ready for such big operations. So, but there's always place for smaller investment and smaller EPCs, ESCOs to take part. So that was one of my biggest, I think, takeaways from this discussion. I don't have a solution here, but probably at least we have identified that we need to be aware of the risks of channeling all activity only through big ESCOs. So there needs to be a place for smaller ESCOs as well. Regarding the EPCs and availability of examples of EPCs, model EPCs, model contracts, that might, well, we've been discussing this for years, that the model EPC might solve many problems because everybody would see that, all right, there is a contract, there's a type of contract that we can use in most of situations, probably there could be some adjustments depending on particular projects, but still, I think if we have an example of an EPC of a contract available, so let's try use it. Also, from the point of view of public institutions, I'm not sure who would be the best institution to address with these about these issues, but obviously this understanding also from the government side that public institutions are in practice no different from private enterprises or even from households in a way, when it comes to the need or requirement to achieve certain energy efficiency levels. Because energy efficiency, I mean, it is an issue for everybody, regardless of whether you're private or public organization. And there are also not only practical arguments which support investment in energy efficiency, but there are also formal requirements. Let me remind everybody, because we have to be able to meet these energy efficiency goals that we have set ourselves and that the European Commission has set to the member states. And if there is no parallel action on all channels, private, public, commercial services, industrial energy efficiency, then it is highly unlikely that the government, who will have to produce a report to Brussels, will not be able to present figures that are satisfactory in the end when the time comes to report the achievements in energy efficiency. So there are many things that we need to be working on, to continue working on several channels at the same time. So it's not that we solve one problem and then jump to the next one. It looks like we need multitasking at this point in time. That's my main conclusion here from today. Of course, I invite all the participants to review once again the presentations that you saw today, and that will be available, as far as I understand, Raimonds, will be available to all participants here. So I absolutely invite you to have a second look and a third look if need be. These presentations, they are quite inspiring and point to the issues that we need to tackle quite well, I think. And well, if you need advice, there's always, well, Robert is just one member of a bigger team, shall I say, but I would like to second his invitation to get in touch if you need consultation regarding investment issues that are related to energy efficiency, EPCs, and the role of ESCOs. I would also like to thank all the speakers once again, Wojciech, Raimonds, Rolandas, and Martins for today's contribution. Very valuable indeed. And I would also like to thank all the participants for staying in the room. The attendance was very good. It means that there is interest there. And well, most likely the team of the organizers will make some sort of a summary of this discussion, just like in previous cases, after previous discussions, and distribute this and make it available to all the participants for as in the form of a food for thought, and probably most importantly, not only as a food for thought, but also a material for taking further steps, further practical steps. So I only wish that we will be able to implement those good things and good examples that we've heard about today. Unless anybody else wishes to say something, the final call. Right. So let's not stick to very formal procedures. In the end, It was my pleasure as a moderator to be moderating the discussion. I think many good things were discussed, and last but not least, I just want to repeat many thanks to the European Commission for providing financing for this relevant project, and also would like to thank the team of the organizers of the event at the Environmental Investment Fund in Riga, and Nils in Denmark and his team in Denmark, and also our Polish colleagues for the contributions here. And I'm looking forward to seeing the result of this discussion, and well, seeing you in the future as well. So with this, I'd say that you can be dismissed. Have a very good rest of the day.
Great.